I mean, in the news now, with these parties that the government, the people in charge were breaking the rules, having these parties in their lovely gardens. I think I've been naive all my life. It's not till now I just go, why do we trust them? Of course we shouldn't trust the people in charge. That's how they're in charge. They shouldn't be trusted.
What happens when you mix dry British wit, unfiltered truth bombs and the political equivalent of soggy toast? Ricky Gervais just lit Keir Starmer up like a Christmas tree in July, and let's just say it wasn't festive. From surgical takedowns to roast-level burns, Ricky didn't hold back. Why was Keir left blinking like a deer in a philosophy class? You're about to find out. Brace yourself, this isn't politics, it's a comedy masterclass with casualties.
Do you know the worst thing is, as well? Apart from the pandemic and the devastation and the deaths and the strain on the health service and people losing their livelihoods and that, the worst thing is the in charge do what they want. And you know what? I see all these people saying,
Starmer is the guy who shows up to a pub quiz and still manages to overthink the question, what's the capital of France? He's like if autocorrect became sentient and tried to run for Prime Minister. Stiff, awkward and constantly offering the wrong answer. But don't worry, it gets worse. This isn't just any political mediocrity. This is mediocrity with a law degree and the charisma of unbuttered toast.
When are we going to stop taking went to Eton as a qualification to run the country? I mean, now.
While the world burns, Keir's biggest mission appears to be figuring out how to triangulate so hard he becomes a geometric shape. One minute he's pretending to be a socialist, the next he's at a private dinner with hedge fund donors, probably asking if his policies could be gently reheated neoliberalism, just enough to keep the rich comfortable but not so spicy that it scares the Daily Mail. He campaigns like he's apologising for existing, then governs like a man trying to solve poverty with a pie chart.
Keir Starmer's premiership is now at 13% approval rating, the lowest approval rating of any Prime Minister in recorded.
Ricky Gervais, who's built a career tearing pretentious people limb from limb, took one look at Starmer and saw the mother lode. This wasn't even a sport, this was charity work. If satire had a Tinder profile, Keir would be the first swipe left, yet somehow still get roasted in the bio. He's the sort of man who'd spend 6 months drafting a 10-point plan on reconnecting with voters, only to alienate every single one by using the word reconnect 48 times in one sentence.
Oh dear. It really went wrong for Keir Starmer this week after he addressed workers at a factory and mentioned Nigel Farage some 16 times.
And I'm speaking out today in relation to Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage, Farage, Nigel 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 Farage.
Embarrassing! Things went from bad to worse. The press, who have historically given him a free ride, which is, I believe, part of the reason why we are where we are, were not.
And let's talk about energy. Ricky has more electricity in a single eyebrow raise than Starmer's entire public presence. Keir's version of passion is blinking twice during a speech. If charisma were fuel, Ricky could power a rock concert, while Keir couldn't charge a Tamagotchi. When Starmer enters a room, the atmosphere drops like someone walked in during a wedding wearing a spreadsheet.
He just betrayed Britain's fishermen. He sold them out to the European Union. He's concluded a Swiss-style agreement with the European Union, which effectively, by one man, by the fiat of one Prime Minister, has reversed the decision of 17.4 million people in the Brexit referendum in 2016.
Now, you'd think someone leading the so-called opposition might occasionally try, opposing something. But Keir treats opposition like a health hazard. He approaches Tory policies the way one might handle a fragile antique, softly, nervously, and always with a nervous glance at Rupert Murdoch. It's like watching a mime argue with a brick wall while apologising for being too loud. And Gervais, he smells that cowardice from across the studio. He doesn't need to yell or call names. He just grins, raises an eyebrow, and lets Keir implode under the weight of his own soggy rhetoric. Gervais doesn't even need to attack. He just has to describe. That's how ridiculous Starmer has become. A man so allergic to conviction he needs an EpiPen when someone says strike action. This is the same Keir Starmer who managed to promise everything and deliver nothing, which, ironically, is a skill in itself. He campaigns like a iPhone terms and conditions document. Long, boring, and nobody remembers what was promised.
Our second largest city. That's not control, it's chaos.
I think the bigger you are, the more you can say what you want. I think we're coming out of it now, but there's been a good few years of ordinary people not being able to say what they want. And some, actors and comedians and artists get in trouble, but I suppose I'm at the stage where I can ignore it and still do and say what I want. So that's good. I mean, free speech is amazing anyway, isn't it? But to have such a platform.
He's the first politician to deliver a manifesto written entirely in disappearing ink. Blink and it's gone. Oh, you thought he stood for nationalisation? Too bad. That expired faster than a lettuce in Liz Truss's fridge. Every time someone asks Keir for a straight answer, you can actually hear the whirring noise of internal polling calculations being done in his brain. It's like calling customer service and getting passed through 17 departments, only to be told the original policy no longer aligns with our strategic priorities. He's the political equivalent of buffering. And the Starmer brand? Don't even get started. This man actually thought the path to Downing Street was paved with Excel sheets, grey suits, and the emotional depth of a toast rack. When Ricky Gervais starts poking fun, it's not even satire anymore. It's anthropology. He's dissecting a creature so bland, it makes porridge look adventurous.
We are moving to warfighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces. When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready. To deliver peace through strength. Every part of society, every citizen of this country has a role to play.
You know your politics have gone fully off the rails when Ricky Gervais, a man who made a living roasting millionaire actors for thanking their agents, has to step in and do what the official opposition refuses to. Not because he wants to, but because someone has to say something while Keir Starmer dithers like a malfunctioning screensaver. While the Tories are gleefully cannonballing into taxpayer-funded hot tubs, Starmer's somewhere in a meeting trying to determine whether water ownership might hurt someone's feelings. His bold rebuttal? We must proceed cautiously with consultation and evidence-based reviews, which roughly translates to, please don't yell at me. I iron my tie for this. Gervais didn't so much criticise as perform an exorcism on the empty suit that is Starmer's leadership, because when the so-called alternative to chaos is this level of beige, satire stops being entertainment and becomes a moral obligation, and Ricky delivered savagely.
I had to endure it as a ginger, so I've got one up there. I've seen firsthand the difference that makes, and so has Keir. We grew up in different ends of the country and at different times. Not too different. But we endured the same insecurities and hardship that so many working people face. I guess the one difference is, though, I had to endure it as a ginger, so I've got one up there.
Ricky doesn't just spotlight the absurdity, he supercharges it with a grin. He grabs hold of Starmer's entire political aura, peers in with forensic precision, and unearths a big fat nothing. No substance, no core, just a perfectly preserved vacuum in a suit. Trying to find emotion in Keir is like trying to stream Netflix with a potato. Technically possible, but deeply unrewarding. If you asked him to express a feeling, he'd probably consult legal before scheduling a follow-up in triplicate. He's mastered the art of saying nothing in the most complicated way imaginable. Every sentence sounds like it was crafted by a government-issued chatbot trained exclusively on public service leaflets. He's so deathly afraid of offending any faction that he's ended up aggravating all of them. The left sees a sellout in a shiny tie, the right sees a damp tissue with a law degree, and the so-called centre just keeps staring blankly, wondering if he's secretly a placeholder until a real politician shows up.
Now we've even got, what's his name, Keir Starmer, sir. That bastard excused Jimmy Savile. He's the one who signed off and said there wasn't enough evidence. That bastard is going to be the prime minister. So a guy who literally, who signed off and said not enough evidence of the man what we now know, Sir Jimmy Savile, who 500 while being greeted by the Queen and, BBC covering. Keir Starmer, is this acceptable? I'll tell you what, I'd rather die in the fight than bow to that crap.
Starmer could hold a press conference in a wind tunnel and somehow generate less energy than the environment around him. His colour scheme is beige, his mood is beige, and his message is, you guessed it, beige. He could be replaced with a laminated diagram and most of the electorate would shrug and carry on. No one votes for a spreadsheet with legs unless they've given up on taste, ambition, and actual human connection. And that's exactly where Ricky Gervais walks in and starts laughing. Remember when leadership meant bold vision, big ideas, and maybe, just maybe, taking a stand? Keir's leadership is more like a community notice board, cautious, laminated, and mostly ignored. He treats decisions like they're radioactive. He'll circle a subject for weeks before finally announcing his position with the enthusiasm of a man confessing he forgot bin day.
I think Starmer's one of the worst prime ministers we've ever had, and he's only been with us 81 days. But look what he's done in those 81 days. He's allowed the Chancellor to go ahead with a scheme where 4,000 pensioners could freeze to death this winter, and those are Labour figures, by the way, not Tory figures, OK. He's introduced a raft of policies like energy, which could make us dependent on overseas energy ad infinitum, so dictators around the world will control what we have in this country. Never mind the sleaze. I mean, goodness gracious, he stood up in the Commons once, looked across the box at Boris Johnson and said, sleaze, sleaze, sleaze.
And when Ricky Gervais decides to take this human beige alert to task, it's not even unfair. It's a public service. Imagine sitting on a burning plane and the pilot starts reading from a policy document about improved air filtration systems. Wouldn't you want someone to stand up and scream, "Does this guy know we're crashing?" That's Ricky. He's the voice of what the hell is going on in a room full of people trying to look composed as the engine falls off. But perhaps the most tragic part of the Starmer saga is how desperately he wants to be seen as competent. Not inspiring, not transformative, just competent. Like his biggest dream is to one day be described as adequate in a broadsheet editorial. And yet even that bar somehow remains tantalisingly out of reach. He manages to miss every open goal like it's a party trick. We're talking about a man who could face a government in full-blown scandal, with ministers resigning faster than passengers on the Titanic. And his big move is to tweet something like, "This raises serious questions. Mate, the house is on fire, and you're asking if the smoke alarm has been tested recently. It's almost impressive how someone can possess so little urgency."
I'm not across the details of the particular case, but let me give you the principles that I would apply. Firstly, I'm strongly in favour of free speech. We've had free speech in this country for a very, very long time, and we protect it fiercely. I'm equally, though, against incitement to violence against other people. That has long been an offence in our country, and rightly so. And so I say, don't know the details of this case, but free speech, yes. Incitement to violence, no.
Does that sound rehearsed to you? Free speech, yes. Incitement to violence, no. Who decides where that line is? Here's the answer. People in authority decide where the line is, and what they want are laws that can be deployed against the people they choose to persecute and prosecute. That's what they want, a kind of vagueness and an opportunity to criminalise whoever it's convenient to criminalise.
Meanwhile, Ricky doesn't do subtle things, he calls it like he sees it. And when he sees Keir Starmer, He sees a bureaucrat, cosplaying as a revolutionary, a man who turns every moment of potential leadership into a TED talk about compromise. Ricky could demolish Keir's entire strategy with one shrug and a sarcastic, "Brilliant, mate, really nailed it." And honestly, that would be more effective than Keir's last 30 speeches combined. It's not that Starmer is hopeless, it's that he's pathologically afraid of hope. Hope implies ambition, change, risk. Keir prefers the warm safety of managed decline with PowerPoint animations. He's like the human version of Let's Not Rock the Boat. Except the boat is already halfway down the waterfall and he's handing out seatbelt instructions.
Very good morning to you. This is always going to be a divisive subject, similar, and I agree with Annabelle, but I don't agree with Henry. Yes, it is a surrender, because this was never mentioned in their manifesto. Labour have lied to come into power, and Labour are continuing their lie now. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And you're rightly saying they've already given away the rights for fishermen, because the simple analogy to this really is Brexit never failed. What did fail was the politicians failing Brexit. That's the problem we have here. It's all to do with the withdrawal agreement. That was a complete and utter fallacy, was a complete and utter failure. If they got their act together, the situation we're in now with the fishermen's deal, that could...
And still, somehow he manages to be smug. How does one maintain smugness while being terminally bland? That's the Starmer paradox. It's like watching someone polish a turd they didn't even shape themselves and still expecting applause for the effort. Ricky Gervais doesn't even need punchlines. Just describing this mess accurately gets more laughs than anything on Netflix. This is a man who studied law, made it to the top of the Crown Prosecution Service, and still can't prosecute a coherent argument in public. Every time he speaks, it sounds like an HR email written by someone who read the word relatable in a management book once. He's the political version of oatmeal. Good intentions, zero taste. And nobody really wants it unless it's the only option. So when Ricky Gervais unleashes, it's less of a roast and more of a mercy killing. It's Ricky standing over the broken remains of Starmer's credibility and asking, was this really your plan? He's not just mocking Keir, he's mocking the system that convinced itself this was the best alternative to a collapsing circus led by hedge fund clowns and karaoke fascists. Because Starmer isn't dangerous, he's worse. He doesn't shake up the status quo, he reads bedtime stories. He doesn't challenge power, he asks it to fill out a feedback form. And when someone like Ricky Gervais comes along and points out that the Emperor isn't just naked, he's also painfully boring, it's not just funny, it's a wake-up call.
Concerns around Keir Starmer's integrity and the integrity of his promises. In his leadership campaign, there were certain pledges around the abolition of tuition fees, taxation on the highest earners and nationalisation of key industries that have fallen by the wayside. How can we trust this round of manifesto pledges?
Some in Labour, even some inside Number 10, think that Keir Starmer might have overdone the gloom. It's one thing to say things are going to be tough. It's another thing to say things are actually going to get worse under us before they get better. And that message seems slightly at odds with...
So here we are, a country knee-deep in crises, looking for a leader. And what do we get? A man who talks like he's narrating an audiobook on cautious optimism, led by consultants and shaped by fear. No wonder Gervais pounced. It wasn't about politics, it was about truth. And sometimes the truth really is hilarious, because in the end, Keir Starmer isn't the villain of this story. He's the bureaucratic shrug emoji wearing a red tie. He's the man who mistook silence for strategy and compromise for courage. And Ricky just said what everyone else was too polite to admit.